Sir, one needs you to leave. The security guard's speech conveyed no emotion, only cold professionalism. Adrian Cross stood firm, his jaw hardening as he watched his daughter Polly swirl through the huge ballroom in her bridal gown. Her laughing mirrored a sound that had once made him happy, but now felt like a sword through his heart. Elena constructed the invisible barrier around him, with pointed stares and deliberate avoidance. Her planning was clear in every aspect of the event. "I have the right to be here," Adrian murmured, his voice firm and controlled, disguising the rage that was mounting inside him. "The bride specifically asked for your departure," the guard insisted, getting closer. "Please don't make things more complicated than they need to be." Elena approached her beautiful gown from across the room, murmuring softly across the marble flooring. The years had done little to diminish her beauty, but Adrian could see the evil beneath, still attempting to spoil important occasions. Her voice was dripping with fake honey. "You were not invited. You should depart. You've poisoned her against me," Adrian muttered, his black gaze fixed on her face. Elena gave a sharp, piercing laugh. "She has not been your daughter since you left us." His fists tightened as he felt abandoned. "Is this the story you're telling everybody? Did I abandon you? Not that I found you in bed with security. Remove him." Elena screamed out, her civility melting as two more guards encircled Adrian. He could have fought them. His body tightened, ready, but he held back. This was not the time or place. Not for what he had intended. "This is not over, Elena," he added quietly. Despite herself, something in his tone made her take a step back. She sneered, "That was years ago. Return home to your empty house and unpleasant recollections." As the guards let him out, Adrian caught sight of Polly. When their gazes connected, he saw nothing but contempt in her eyes. A second later, she turned aside, ignoring him entirely. Adrian sat in his car in the parking lot, his white knuckles gripping the steering wheel. The recollection of 5 years ago returned, vivid as broken glass. 5 years earlier, Adrian got home early from his business trip, and the house was silent. He had intended to surprise Elena by bringing her favorite chocolates from Switzerland. Instead, he discovered her phone on the kitchen counter, its screen lit up with notifications. One mail preview attracted his attention. "Last night was incredible. I can't wait to hold you in my arms again." Adrian stood there, reading message after message, each one revealing years of duplicity. Private talks, images, and plans planned behind his back. His hands trembled not with loss, but with rage. He waited in the gloomy living room until Elena arrived home. When she turned on the lights and saw him, she froze. "Adrian, you are home early." Her amazement soon turned to appeal, but it was too late. He saw through it, but how long? His voice was soft. "Dangerous." "What do you mean, darling?" He held up her phone. "Max Aguilar, how long have you slept with him?" The charm had faded from her features, replaced by calculating. "You went through my phone. How dare you breach my privacy?" "How about your privacy?" Adrian moved forward, his presence filling the space. "How about our marriage vows? What about the trust someone has in you?" "Oh, come," Elena snarled, discarding her pretense. "Trust. You were never here. Always working, always traveling. What were you expecting?" "I anticipated loyalty and honor." "Adrian, move closer." His voice was low and threatening. "I didn't anticipate my wife to be." The slap resonated around the room. Adrian didn't flinch when Elena's handprint scorched into his cheek. "Get out," she hissed. "Get out of my home." "Your house?" Adrian's voice was cold. "I've paid for everything here. Everything you have I gave you, including my youth and greatest years." Elena shot back, ridiculing Adrian for being so focused on his job that he was completely unaware of what was going on right in front of his eyes. "Max is twice the man you'll ever become." Adrian's laugh lacked warmth. "We will see about that today." Adrian started the car. The embarrassment during the wedding was not surprising. It was part of their plan, another attempt to break him. They had no idea what he was capable of or what he had become after years of preparing. He drove to a stylish office building downtown and took the elevator to the top floor, where his assistant, Gloria McDowell, waited at her desk. "Despite the late hours, did they throw you out?" she inquired, rising to accompany him into his office. Adrian loosened his tie, as predicted. "Is Elena present in the conference room with the files?" Lana Moyer looked up as he arrived, her sharp features fixed on the documents spread in front of her. "How was the wedding?" she asked. "Predictably hostile," Adrian responded, taking his seat. "What? Did you find it? It's enough to bury them both." Lorna pushed a folder towards him. "Max's bank records reveal a pattern of dishonesty dating back years. Elena has been siphoning money from your previous accounts since before the divorce." "Good." Adrian opened his laptop and pulled up a document called Project Justice. Then it is time to begin. Are you certain about this? Gloria asked. Not out of uncertainty, but to affirm. Adrian's smile had no warmth. They believed they could humiliate me, ruin me, and turn my own daughter against me. They are going to discover that treason has repercussions. Elena started arranging the files. I'll contact our investigator first thing tomorrow, once we've set up surveillance. No, Adrian interrupted. We start tonight. He leaned forward. They think this is their moment of glory, watching me be kicked out of my daughter's wedding. Allow them to enjoy it. They will be rejoicing, careless. It's the perfect time to start documenting their mistakes. He turned to Gloria. Contact Donnie Johns. I want eyes on them within 1 hour. Every move, meeting, and phone call. I want everything recorded. Gloria held up her phone. Already finished. He's simply waiting for your signal. Adrian was filled with satisfaction. Years of planning, years of observation, accumulating riches, while acting defeated. It was all going to pay off. Elena mentioned one thing with caution. I dug into Polly's birth records. Adrian raised a hand. I do not want to know. Not yet. His eyes clouded. First, we'll deal with Elena and Max. That is our priority. He stood and headed to his desk, where a chessboard sat, the pieces frozen in mid-game. He shifted a black knight into place. They believe the game is done, he mumbled. They don't realize it's just the beginning. The night stretched ahead, packed with plans and preparations. Adrian Cross's metamorphosis from victim to victor began in his office, far above the city. From betrayed spouse to architect of justice, the ache of betrayal had not lessened over the years. He merely learned how to make it into a weapon, and now the weapon was ready to strike. Polly's wedding celebrations lasted until late at night. Champagne flowed freely, toasts were exchanged, and the happy couple danced beneath crystal chandeliers. But at 2:47 a.m., everything changed with one phone call. Adrian sat at his home office, analyzing the security photographs Donnie had previously received from the wedding reception. Images of Elena and Max were captured at personal times that they assumed were private. His phone buzzed, and Elena's name appeared on the screen. He let it ring 4 times, relishing each desperate chime before responding. Adrian? Elena's voice quivered. Adrian, I need your aid. He replied coldly. Wrong number, and hung up. Please. The police. They're inquiring about a hit and run near your previous home. The victim's automobile was discovered in Miller's Lake. They believe I was involved. Adrian leaned back in his chair, a slight smile on his lips. Why would they believe that someone saw a car like mine in the area that night? I need you to let them know I was with you, please, Adrian. They're discussing murder charges. Let's get this straight. Adrian's voice became silky smooth. You want me to offer an alibi after security kicked me out of my daughter's wedding? That was different. This is serious. I could go to jail. It sounds like a personal problem. Daddy. Polly's voice came through the telephone, dripping with tears. Please assist. Mom. I know we've had disagreements, but what exactly are they? Adrian cut her off. Is that what you're calling it? Turning your back on me and trusting her lies. They were not lies. Polly argued that you abandoned us. Ask your mother about Max Aguilar. Inquire as to how long she spent sleeping with him while I was out working to provide you both with everything you desired. Silence. Muffled sobs. The police will be here shortly. Elena came back on, her voice frantic. Please, Adrian, they are bringing a detective. For old time's sake, it's the past. Adrian gave a gruff laugh. For example, when you drained our accounts, you informed everyone that I was an aggressive husband. That was in the past. I am imploring you. Hello, Elena. Enjoy your talk with the police. He ended the connection and instantly dialed a new number for you. He claimed they took the bait. Contact Loretta Rowe. Tell her it's time to clear her conscience. Within an hour, Adrian was sitting in a quiet cafe, watching Loretta fret with her coffee cup. Elena's former best buddy had not fared well over the years. She appeared anxious and old beyond her years. Loretta murmured, looking around the empty diner. They'll slaughter me if they find out I'm talking to you. Adrian told her that no one knew she was here. Tell me what occurred that night. Loretta drew a hesitant breath. They had been drinking. Elena and Maximilian. They've been celebrating something in the Blue Room. I arrived early, but I departed before it occurred. They struck someone on Miller's Road. A man walks his dog. They panicked. Max called his pal, Greg Galloway. Max turns to him when he has a difficulty. They placed the man's body in his own automobile and drove it into the lake. The dog ran away. Did you see this? Loretta shakes her head. No, but Elena returned to my house later, distraught, drinking more, and confessing everything. My security camera captured it all. Adrian remarked softly. I kept the recording thinking that one day, you would do the right thing. She took out a USB drive with trembling palms. Please don't tell them this came from me. Max's pal, Greg. He is dangerous. He has done things for Max previously. What kind of items? Bad things happen. Really terrible. Loretta gulped hard. Max is not only Alina's lover. He is related. Organized crime, fraud and money laundering. Greg handles the violent stuff. Adrian took the USB drive. Are you sure about this? Regarding Max's criminal history? Positive. Elena knows everything. She assists him in concealing funds and setting up bogus accounts. She isn't only a cheater, Adrian. She is a component of their business. Adrian stood and placed a soothing hand on Loretta's shoulder. I assure you that you will be safeguarded. Adrian returned to his office and checked the surveillance tape. Elena, intoxicated and hysterical, admitted everything. The affair, the hit and run, Max's illegal enterprise. It exceeded his expectations. His phone broke. A text from Donnie Johns. I discovered Max's police record. There are several fraud investigations underway. Possible connections to the Martinez cartel. Want the entire file? Adrian smiled. Send everything. It was time to introduce Detective Bernice Welch to their mini-drama. He went to his computer and composed a carefully anonymized email. The evidence would not be discarded all at once. No, it will be released gradually, strategically. Allow them to sweat. Allow them to turn on each other. Elena was calling, and his phone buzzed again. He refused the call and created a new entry in his project file. Day 1. Phase 1 targets exhibited indicators of panic. Loretta Rose testified, and Max's illicit links were proven. Detective Welch will receive the first evidence package tomorrow. He closed the file. Satisfaction coursed through him. They believed they were dealing with the same man they had betrayed. Years ago. They were wrong. That man died the day he saw the messages on Elena's phone. Someone else had taken his place. Someone who had spent years developing patience, resources, and planning. For the moment. The police would be interviewing them now, as their stories unraveled. Max's illegal ties to the surface, the perfectly crafted facade they had erected, would soon crack and shatter, and Adrian would be there to witness it all crumble, piece by meticulously organized piece. Detective Bernice Welch grimaced at the anonymous email that had arrived in her inbox. Normally, she ignored such recommendations, but this one was different, detailed, specific. She selected the accompanying audio file. Elena's drunken confession is played through her speakers. It was Max. We panicked and contacted Greg. He made it disappear. Bernice's eyes narrowed. She looked up all three names: Elena Cross, Max Aguilar, and Greg Galloway. A network of questionable activity and deep connections unraveled in front of her. A knock on the door. Officer Martinez. Are the witnesses here, the ones who saw the automobile that night? Bernice nodded, her gaze fixed on Max Aguilar's comprehensive record. Despite multiple fraud probes and potential organized crime ties, nothing had stuck until now. In the interview room, the witness, an older guy who had been out walking his dog that night, described what he witnessed. I noticed a silver Mercedes veering along Miller's Road. Then I heard a thud, followed by screams. The dog began barking, and suddenly the automobile drove away. Detective Welch leaned forward. And are you positive about the time? Check my Fitbit data. He slid the printed report across the table. I walked the same route every night. 11:47 p.m. This is when I heard the crash. Adrian returned to his office and monitored the investigation's development through his well-placed sources. Donnie Johns had insider knowledge of Detective Walsh's movements within the police agency. They're bringing in Greg Galloway to question. Gloria reported coming in with new coffee. And I have something else you should see. She handed him a packet inside. Bank statements, dozens of them, all related to Alina. She's been busy, Adrian whispered as he turned the pages. Multiple accounts, all in her maiden name, with money flowing in from Max's firms and then disappearing to offshore accounts. There's more, Gloria added. These accounts are tied to known money laundering operations. Adrian's eyes darkened. Gloria explained that Max is more than just a fraudster. He's laundering money for the drug cartels. Adrian's phone alerted Calvin Hurley, the investigative journalist he had contacted earlier that week. Mr. Cross, you were correct regarding the shell firms. I discovered a pattern dating back years. Real estate deals and bogus enterprises are all funneling funds via your ex-wife's accounts. How did you know? Let's meet in a quiet bar across town. Calvin Hurley scribbled notes as Adrian meticulously laid out the scenario, which he altered to protect his own involvement. As a result, Max Aguilar conceals his activities behind legal businesses. Calvin summarized, with Elena Cross handling the financials. And now, Adrian added, they're both involved in a hit-and-run murder, along with Greg Galloway, a man with a fascinating history of making issues disappear. Calvin exhaled. This is explosive, but I'll need evidence. Adrian slid the USB device across the table. Bank data, corporation filings, witness statements, everything you need to check independently. As Calvin drove away, Adrian received a text message from Lana. Financial records were collected. You should see this in Lana's workplace. Elena's financial malfeasance was documented on 3 monitors, including bank statements, transfer records, and corporate documents. Everything pointed to organized theft and fraud. Lana claimed that she didn't just take your money after the divorce, but had been embezzling from company accounts for years. Adrian leaned in to analyze the patterns. Each transaction was meticulously disguised as a legitimate business expense, but the funds were invariably deposited into accounts controlled by enormous shell firms. How much? Millions, Lana said sadly. She used her status as your wife to gain access to corporate accounts, she continued. Then she built a sophisticated web of transfers. The money went towards Max's operations and their extravagant lifestyle. Adrian's jaw constricted. Send anything to Detective Welch anonymously. Already finished. Do you want a set? But there is something else. She opened up another document. I discovered evidence that Max has used your company's legitimate contracts as a cover for his unlawful activities. She browses through the files. Every legitimate transaction is accompanied by a shadow transaction. Adrian twisted his lips into a chilly smile. Perfect. This gives us control over his entire enterprise. The next morning, Calvin Hurley's first article made headlines. A local business person has been tied to an international money laundering enterprise. The novel exhaustively detailed Max's illegal ties, with Elena's role strongly hinted but not directly acknowledged. Meanwhile, Adrian's phone was continually buzzing. Messages from common acquaintances express outrage and demand comments. He disregarded them all. His attention stayed on the surveillance photographs Donnie had just sent. One image depicted Max and Greg in a dimly lit parking garage, their bodies tight and their emotions aggressive. Another video shows Elena walking inside a law firm, known for defending organized criminal leaders. Gloria noticed them scrambling while browsing through the images. Max and Greg had a furious dispute. Their partnership appears to be breaking under pressure. Good. Adrian selected a time to apply extra pressure. Release the next batch of evidence to Detective Welch's office. Detective Welch got yet another anonymous email. This time, it included extensive logs of Greg Galloway's movements from the night of a hit-and-run cell phone tower incident. After placing all 3 suspects on the scene, Welch leaned back and surveyed the investigation board, which included her phone records, bank paperwork, witness statements, and surveillance images. Each piece of evidence fit together seamlessly. It's almost as if someone is arranging this, she said to her boyfriend. Maybe someone is, he responded. Then he paused. He went on to say that they had hit a banker. It turned out he was investigating suspicious transactions at his bank, linked to Max Aguilar's businesses. Walsh. His eyes narrowed. She responded no, indicating that it was not a random hit and run. Her partner agreed that it was murder disguised as an accident. Adrian returned to his office and checked the last details of his plan for Act 1. The evidence was in place. The media was involved. The inquiry was gathering traction, and, most significantly, his targets were under pressure, making mistakes. Calvin's next article appears tomorrow, Gloria reported. This one focuses on Elena's involvement in the financial crimes. He's obtained quotes from previous employees regarding questionable transactions. And Loretta is safely away. Gloria nodded. We have her in a secure area with round-the-clock protection. She's prepared to testify when the time comes. Adrian was filled with satisfaction. Everything was going perfectly as planned. The trap was set, and his victims were blinded by their own desperation. We're walking right into it. Send a message to Detective Welch. He requested an anonymous tip regarding Greg Galloway's warehouse near the lake. Let's see what her search dogs discover there. As darkness settled over the city, Adrian stood at his office window, watching the lights flicker in the distance. Elena and Max were scurrying in one of the buildings, anxious to save their crumbling enterprise. Allow them to try. It was too late. The evidence was already in motion. The witnesses were in place. The authorities were close in. This was only the beginning of their downfall. But that was a start. Adrian had planned meticulously. Years of watching, waiting, and scheming. And now all he had to do was watch their world crumble around them. Piece by meticulously placed piece. His wrath had begun, and there was no turning back now. Justice, cold and unwavering, was finally catching up with those who had wronged him. Detective Bernice Welch stood in the pre-dawn darkness, outside a line across his mansion, her colleagues strategically positioned throughout the property. She checked her watch. 5:47 a.m. move in. She spoke into her radio. The arrest crew broke through the main door with seasoned speed. They found Elena inside, dressed in silk pajamas, and screaming at the intruder. "What is the significance of this?" she insisted, her immaculate makeup already applied despite the early hour. "Elena Cross, step forward, Detective Wolf. You've been arrested for murder, conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering." Elena's eyes blazed with fury. "This is ridiculous. I demand to talk with my lawyer." "You'll get the chance." Welch nodded at her policeman. "But first, we need to talk about the body in Miller's Lake across town." Another squad, commanded by Detective Sarah Martinez, approached Max Aguilar's apartment. Inside, they discovered Max feverishly trying to flush documents down his toilet. Martinez handcuffed him. "We already have your friend Greg Galloway in custody. He's been very talkative in his workplace." Adrian followed the arrests in real time via updates from his surveillance team, while Gloria came with coffee and a tablet displaying breaking news articles. A prominent socialite has been arrested in connection with a murder inquiry. Max Aguilar, a business magnate, has been tied to organized crime. 3 people have been arrested in connection with the Miller's Lake homicide. Gloria said that Calvin's pieces are appearing in all of the major media outlets. Social media is booming. Adrian's phone was busted while calling. "It's finished," she said without a preamble. "Judge Harrison signs the asset. Orders can be frozen. Their accounts are locked." Elena believed all of them were untraceable, including the offshore ones. Adrian smiled. "She's broke." They're both looking via his office window. "Adrian, watch the sunrise. Paint the city skyline. What about shell companies?" Frozen laughed. His voice was full of satisfaction. "The forensic accountants are having a field day. The fraud goes deeper than we anticipated." She paused before saying, "Max wasn't just laundering money, he was stealing from his own criminal partners." Adrian exhaled with great delight. That should keep him busy explaining things to his cartel associates. Detective Wolf stood outside the interrogation room at the police station, peering into the two-way mirror to observe Elena. Her customary composure was slipping. Mascara smudged, her eyes darting with increasing terror as she grasped the full weight of evidence heaped against her watch and walked inside. "Mrs. Cross, let us discuss the night of March." "Of course, I want my lawyer." Walsh leaned forward, her voice quiet. "But you should know that we have your confession on video. The one you built at Loretta Rose's home." Elena's face had lost its color. "That is not permissible." "Maybe I was drunk." Welch slid a folder onto the table, but the DNA evidence from the victim's automobile was not present. Neither are the transfer records indicating that you moved millions through Max's sham businesses. She tilted her head. "One will explain those in another interrogation chamber." Max was disintegrating. "Look, this is all a misunderstanding," he said. "Elena handled the financial aspects. I simply signed what she instructed me to sign." Detective Martinez arched his brow and laid out images in front of him. "Really? We have security footage of you meeting with known cartel members here to explain this." Max's face blanched. He gulped hard, and his voice broke. "I want immunity." His fingers moved on the table. "I'll tell you all about Elena's operation. She orchestrated the entire event." Calvin Hurley sat in his editor's office, planning the specifics of his upcoming expose. "This is more than a conventional murder case," he explained. "We're looking at a criminal business that has been functioning for years, involving money laundering, fraud, and connections to international drug gangs." His editor leaned back. "Adrian Cross, the ex-husband, has any comments?" "No, he is maintaining his distance." Calvin smirked. "You're a smart dude. My sources, however, suggest he founded the company from which they were stealing. This must be extremely shocking." Across the city, Adrian's staff convened in his conference room to examine the morning's event schedule and distribute financial documents, while Gloria updated their tracking board. Lorna claimed that the day is asking for the highest possible charges. "The evidence is overwhelming. They will not be offering plea bargains." "What about Gregory Galloway?" Adrian asked. Gloria grinned and sang like a bird. "He's worried about Max's cartel connections." Adrian's expression remained unreadable when he was placed under witness protection. "Make sure Detective Welch receives the records of his earlier activity. Let's see how much protection he actually deserves." By dusk, the story had dominated every news station. Security footage showed Elena and Max being escorted into county jail, their luxury attire changed with prison jumpsuits. Their booking images appeared online. Elena's sophisticated veneer was destroyed, and Max's arrogance gave way to dread. Adrian opened his laptop in his office and began to update his project file. Phase 2 finished the targets and custodial assets. The media has frozen its coverage. Extensive public humiliation was achieved. No attempt by Max to blame Alina. Betrayal is expected to begin ahead of time. He closed the file, satisfaction coursing through him. The fall had begun just as intended, but it was merely the beginning. The true test would come when they discovered what was hiding in those frozen accounts. Truths that would rip their union apart. Elena paced her detention cell, her high heels long gone and replaced with prison slippers. 3 days in jail had taken away her polished exterior, revealing the desperate woman beneath. "I need to make a call," she demanded. "It's important." The guard scarcely looked at her. "Have you already seen your lawyer today?" "Not my attorney. I need to contact Adrian Cross at his workplace." "Adrian, please listen to the recorded call." Elena's voice was filled with desperation. "Adrian, please. You have to help me. I know you're involved in this somehow. I'll do anything, give you the money back, and sign whatever you want. Please get me out of here. Adrian." Press the delete key. Turn towards Gloria. "Are there any other attempts at contact?" Gloria claimed that she has been reaching out through mutual friends, and that her lawyer attempted to contact Polly in the hopes that she may appeal to you and Max. Adrian's interest grew. "That is more fascinating." Gloria brought up a surveillance report. "He has been meeting with his lawyer twice every day. They're working on an agreement with the district attorney." Adrian let out a slow, frigid laugh. "Let me guess. He has already started to throw Elena under the bus." Gloria smirked. "He claims she orchestrated everything, and that he was simply a dumb executive who signed agreements without reading them." Adrian leaned back, his eyes glinting. "Submit an anonymous tip to Elena's lawyer. Let her know what Max has planned." Elena learned about the news at the county jail's women's wing. Her rage-filled cry resonated across the frigid corridors. "That backstabbing scumsucker. Give me my lawyer right now." An hour later, Alan Sherman entered the visitation room, tired. "Elena, you should calm down." Her eyes flared. "Calm down. Max is attempting to blame everything on me. We need to strike first." Elena's voice was harsh, her thoughts rushing. "I want to strike a deal." Her attorney sighed. "The prosecutor isn't offering any promotions. The evidence against both of you is too strong." Elena's eyes glinted with hate. "Then we'll get them to want a deal. I know something about Max's procedure. The police have not found anything yet. Names, dates, and location of bodies." Meanwhile, on the men's wing, Max was going through a personal dilemma. His lawyer's expression was bleak. "Elena is talking to the district attorney." Max's hands shook as he rubbed them through his hair. "She is unable to prove anything." "She does not have to," his lawyer responded. "She only needs to give them enough to start digging. And with your cartel ties." "Don't speak that word," Max hissed, his gaze darting about furiously. His attorney leaned in. "They already know. The real question is, what will you do about it?" Max paced his cage, jaw gritted. "Contact Greg. Tell him to handle Loretta." The lawyer shook his head. "Mr. Galloway is in protective custody. He has already issued his official statement." "Max." His voice lowered. "Then let someone else handle it. I have individuals who can." His lawyer did not flinch. "Your accounts are frozen. All of them. Nobody is taking your calls anymore." Across town, Detective Welch checked the most recent transcripts in her office. "They're turning against each other," she informed her partner. "They did exactly what our anonymous friend predicted." Her companion gave her a file. "Speaking of which, another package has arrived. Details about 3 unsolved homicides, presumably connected to Max Aguilar." Walsh's eyes narrowed. "Our tipsters have been busy. Almost as if they know just where to search in Lena's office." Adrian inspected their progress. Max attempted to arrange a hit on Loretta. Lorna reported. He used his jail contacts, but no one was willing to aid him. Word has spread about his cartel affiliations. "Nobody wants the heat." Elena cast a peek at him. "She's making outrageous charges, claiming she has evidence that Max ordered murders." Adrian smirked. "The prosecutor." Elena shrugged while exploring. "They're looking into it, but she's frantic, tossing everything at the wall to see what sticks." Adrian fixed his tie. "It's the perfect time for Phase 3. Elena's eyes narrowed. "Are you sure about this?" "Give the offshore account information to the cartel's lawyers." Mana hesitated. "That will sign Max's death warrant." Adrian's look was unreadable. "He signed it himself when he stole from them. I'm just making sure they understand exactly how much." The following day, Max received a visitor. A cartel lawyer wearing a costly outfit. The meeting was brief. Max emerged, pale and trembling. "I need protection," he said to the guards. "You have to send me to segregation. They are going to slaughter me." Elena was ecstatic in her cell when she heard about Max's breakdown. She smirked. He believed he could pin everything on me. I will bury him. But her triumph was short-lived. That afternoon, her lawyer arrived, his face somber. They discovered your hidden accounts. Elena froze. That is impossible. Nobody knew about them save her, who came to a halt as knowledge dawned. Adrian. Her lawyer's voice sounded hollow. Whoever it was, they gave complete documentation. It's all related to Max's illicit activities. The DA is imposing additional charges. Elena collapsed against a wall. Contact Adrian again. Tell him I apologize. Tell him I will confess. I will give everything back, Mrs. Cross. Her lawyer's stare did not waver, and there was nothing left to offer back. What? The accounts are empty. The properties are confiscated. Even your personal belongings were confiscated as profits of crime, at his workplace. Adrian took the news of their increasing desperation with quiet joy. Everything was going just how he'd planned. Their union was collapsing. Their resources were gone. And their desperate attempts to save themselves resulted in even more deadly mistakes. Sir Gloria entered with a new report. Elena is attempting to reach Polly again. She claims she has evidence that you arranged the entire incident. Adrian remained unmoved. Allow her to try. His voice was calm. Nobody trusts what she says anymore. Returning to the window, he observed the city below. The parts were falling into place. Each betrayal and accusation drove his targets farther into self-destruction. They would soon be left with nothing. No money, no allies, no hope, just like they had abandoned him 5 years before. Calvin Hurley's most recent expose was published online at midnight. The strong, scathing title read Murder, Money, and Betrayal, the complete story of the Aguilar Cross criminal empire. The article revealed years of illicit conduct, supported by bank records, witness statements, and surveillance images. It described how Elena Cross, a once trusted wife, stole millions, how Max Aguilar constructed a criminal empire disguised as respectable businesses, and how their greed culminated in murder in the county jail's library. Elena read the piece with shaky hands, with each paragraph removing another layer of the veneer. She had painstakingly built it. The people finally recognized her for who she was. She confided to her lawyer, "They are calling me a black widow. They claim I seduced Max to gain access to Adrian's company, and that we planned everything from the beginning." Sherman sighed. "The evidence is compelling." Elena's gaze brightened. "What evidence?" Sherman produced printouts, emails, and communications between her and Max dating back 7 years, before her divorce from Adrian. They laid out exactly how she would assist Max in laundering money through Adrian's legal enterprises, how they would gradually deplete the accounts, and how they would eventually seize control of everything. Elena's breath caught. These were private. Her voice became frantic. Nobody could have accessed them. Sherman's attitude remained stern. They were backed up on Max's cloud server. The authorities grabbed his computers. They discovered everything in the men's wing. Max confronted his own downfall. His illicit enterprise was now widely known. His reputation was ruined. The discoveries concerning his personal life, however, destroyed him completely. Multiple affairs, his lawyer mumbled, skimming the most recent publications. Max's face paled. Those records were sealed. His attorney breathed sharply. Not anymore. Someone provided Calvin Hurley a full, detailed report. Detective Welch added another layer to her investigation board. The anonymous tips had yielded a wealth of information, not only concerning the Millers Lake murder, but also about years of illegal behavior. She motioned to the board. "Check out this pattern." Her spouse studied it. Every hint points to another crime or relationship. It's like following a trail of breadcrumbs. He paused. Nearly too perfect. Welch nodded slowly, as if everything had been planned ahead of time. Her partner's eyes narrowed. "Somebody did," Walsh exhaled. "The true question is, who and why?" Lana presented the most recent financial analysis to Adrian in his office. The forensic accountants have tracked down everything she reported. The money trail dates back to their first meeting, when Elena was still your wife. She hesitated before adding, "Max has other affairs, which are all documented. He kept extensive records, including dates, locations, and even the gifts he purchased for them, which were all paid for with laundered money." Adrian nodded, satisfied in his expression. "Ensure that copies reach all affected husbands. Let's see how many more foes we can create for him." The media frenzy grew. Every day brought new revelations, scandals, and incriminating evidence of corruption and betrayal. Elena's and Max's faces appeared everywhere, in newspapers, on television panels, and in social media debates. Elena saw her business disintegrate from within her jail cell. Former pals conducted devastating interviews. exposing her manipulation and cruelty. Business associates came out with stories about fraud and dishonesty. Even her social media history was revealed. Every post was examined for indications of her true personality. "They're destroying me," she informed her lawyer, her voice taut with rage. "Everything I created. Everything I am. Everything is being pulled apart." Sherman's look was inscrutable. "You based it on lies. That is the problem." Max suffered the same fate. His criminal partners, now aware of his treason, cut all links. The cartel lawyers made it plain that he was on his own. He pleaded with his counsel. "You do not understand. I did not only steal their money. I kept records of names, dates, and transactions. If they believe, I might talk." His lawyer cut him off with a strong voice. "Then you should have considered that before maintaining such thorough records." The pressure rose. Elena and Max, once partners in crime, turned on each other publicly from behind bars. She gave interviews describing him as the mastermind who seduced and perverted her. In retaliation, he revealed damaging information. Her clandestine affairs, secret accounts, and direct role in the Miller Lake murder. Adrian sat in his office and watched every betrayal and accusation unfold, another stage in his meticulously crafted plan. Their pretenses had broken, revealing their genuine natures to the world. Sir Gloria entered with another update. Detective Welch has just re-interviewed Greg Galloway. He acknowledged 3 other murders, following Max's orders. He offers to provide the sites in exchange for witness protection. He says he's terrified Max will kill him as well. Adrian nodded as another piece fell into place. "Have our personnel verify his allegations before Welch visits the areas." Gloria responded that we don't want any shocks already. Donnie's team discovered evidence for at least 2 of the sites. They documented everything but left it undisturbed for the police in the questioning room, where Detective Walsh sat across from Greg Galloway. The individual has lost weight while in detention. His fine outfit was gone, replaced by prison orange. The confidence he previously possessed had been replaced by restless strain. Welch instructed, "Start from the beginning. Everything you know about Max's operations." Greg paused, his voice unsteady. "You do not comprehend. If I talk, I'll die. The cartel does not forgive. Betrayal." Welch leaned forward, unimpressed. "You are already chatting. We might as well make it count." Greg gulped hard and lowered his voice to a whisper. Max wasn't simply laundering their money. He was skimming through every transaction and doctoring the books. The cartel assumed they were getting their money back clean, but Max was taking a cut of the top mulch. His eyes narrowed. "How much?" "Millions." Greg exhaled shakily, and Elena helped him conceal it. She created a tangle of accounts, shifting money so quickly that no one could follow it. Wolf studied him, but Greg's hands trembled. "Except somebody did." His voice sank even lower. "Someone traced it. All of it. We stole every penny and used every shell business." Someone knew precisely where to look. Elena paced anxiously in her cell, the latest news driving her to breaking point. Not only were her accounts empty, but her safety deposit boxes had been discovered and confiscated. Boxes with incriminating evidence. She had maintained his insurance against Max. "Give me Adrian," she yelled at her attorney. "He is behind this. He needs to be." Nobody else knew about the boxes. Sherman stayed calm, seeking to soothe her. "Mrs. Cross is making accusations without proof." "Proof?" Elena abruptly cut him off, her eyes flaming. "Look at how this is unfolding. The timing, the accuracy, the way every secret is revealed. This is vengeance. His vengeance." Sherman stopped before responding carefully. "Even if it were true, what could you do about it? The evidence against you is real, regardless of how it was discovered." Elena collapsed against the wall, her fancy jumpsuit rumpled and her carefully controlled composure crumbling. "He is destroying us piece by piece. Everything we built and stole. He is regaining control of the men's wing." Max suffered his own severe blow. His lawyer arrived and placed a packet in front of him. Inside were surveillance photos that were time-stamped and annotated, showing him in secret meetings with cartel members. Max's face became pallid. He mumbled, "These were in a sealed file. Someone delivered them to the DA's office this morning, as revealed by his lawyer, along with full details of your money laundering business." "No," Max muttered, his hand shaking. "The records were encrypted. Nobody could. Someone did." The lawyer's tone was dismal. "And there is more. Your private server contains all of your insurance information. It has been accessed. Everything you gathered to defend yourself. All the information you had about your partners, clients, and the cartel. It is currently in police custody." Max sank in his chair, the weight of truth crushing him. "It's Adrian Cross, right? This is his revenge." His lawyer did not respond. Max mumbled to himself, his voice full of panic. "Take a look at what is happening. He's not only exposing our sins, he's demolishing them. We created the money, connections, and protection we believed we had. He's taking it all away. In his office, Adrian reviewed the most recent improvements. Greg's confession opened up new areas of investigation, resulting in more dead, more crimes, and more evidence of Max and Elena's depravity. The DA is filing new charges for a reported murder, conspiracy, and racketeering. They're putting up a long-term case. She paused before saying, Detective Welch suspects the anonymous tips are from someone with inside information, but she can't prove it. Adrian smiled slightly and replied, she doesn't need to. The proof stood on its own. Years of preparing, monitoring, and waiting had led to this point. His targets were trapped, their resources depleted, and their union fractured, turning on one another like cornered rats. They revealed more of their own sins with each desperate disclosure. Gloria arrived with a final report. Elena is trying to strike a bargain. She placed the file on Adrian's desk. She's offering to testify against Max, claiming she has proof he ordered many murders. Adrian barely looked at the report. Allow her to try. He looked out the window, watching twilight sink over the city. Act 2 was nearing its end. His opponents had destroyed themselves, exactly as he had planned. Desperation, betrayal, and last-ditch measures to preserve oneself. Everything had played into his hands. The tide had turned, sweeping away their carefully crafted facades and exposing their true natures. And in their desperate attempt to survive, they had disclosed many more atrocities than he was aware of. Justice was served not by his hand but by their own demise. They had built their empire on betrayal and murder, and now the same forces were ripping it apart. Adrian shut his laptop, a rush of satisfaction sweeping over him. The reveal was completed. His adversaries were exposed, their misdeeds revealed, and their partnership dissolved. All that was left was to watch. The justice system issued its final verdict. Act 2 had gone exactly as planned. The scene was set for the last act, but it would happen later. For the time being, he would relish their demise, knowing that each desperate attempt to save themselves simply led them deeper into the trap he had laid. The courthouse was alive with suspense, as Adrian Cross took his seat in the gallery. Though he kept mute, his presence drew attention away from Elena Cross's trial, and Max Ugla's case had become the city's most prominent in years. District Attorney Sarah Martinez took the podium and began speaking clearly and confidently. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what you will hear in the next weeks is more than simply a hit and run. It involves years of deliberate deception, financial fraud, and murder. Elena sat rigidly in the defendant's box, her prison jumpsuit contrasting sharply with her normal designer outfit. Martinez continued, Max, seated apart from her, couldn't stop fidgeting. The evidence will establish that these defendants based their lives on theft, fraud, and eventually murder when their crimes were at risk of being exposed. They neutralized the threat intentionally and with forethought. Elena leaned forward and whispered to Adrian, they've arranged the evidence perfectly. Each witness builds on the last, forming an unbreakable chain. Adrian nodded slightly, keeping his expression unaltered. The DA's office had unknowingly adopted his anonymous advice for the prosecution plan. The first eyewitness was an old man who saw the automobile that night. It swerved as if the driver was intoxicated. Then I heard a crash and a scream as the car drove away. And can you recognize the car? Silver Mercedes, identical to the one in the images. Mrs. Cross's automobile. Elena's lawyer objected, but the harm had been done. The jurors had heard it. Then came the forensic accountant. We discovered a complicated network of shell corporations and offshore accounts. Money would pass via several entities, making it appear legitimate. But in the end, it all came back to illegal businesses. And who oversaw these accounts? Mrs. Cross and Mr. Ugla collaborated. The signatures and authorizations are apparent. Max's counsel attempted to contest the evidence's legitimacy, but the prosecution was prepared. They had documentation on everything, including dates, times, locations, and signatures. Witness after witness testified, and former employees revealed unusual transactions. Business partners testified about being cheated. Every testimony tightened the noose. Then came Loretta Rowe. Martinez began. Please inform the court about the night of March 15th. Loretta exchanged a concerned glance with Elena before speaking. She arrived at my house drunk and agitated. She admitted to everything, including the hit and run, the disposal of the body, and the entire criminal enterprise. And did you record this confession? Yes. My security system captured it all. The courtroom went hushed as the video played. Elena's intoxicated voice filled the room, recounting the atrocity in vivid detail. Even the most veteran reporters appeared disturbed. Elena slurred, we hit him. During the recording, Max was driving. The man noticed something he shouldn't have in the bank. We couldn't let him speak. So as he walked his dog that night in the defendant's box, Elena turned pale. Her face drained of color. Her lawyer swiftly asked for a recess, which the court denied. Greg Galloway took the stand next. Now under witness protection, he spoke openly about Max's illicit activities. It wasn't the first time he asked me to dispose of dead before the lake. How many others? There are 3 that I know of. Business transactions have gone awry. People threatened to disclose the scheme. Max exploded and leapt to his feet. You are a lying scum sucker. You're simply trying to save yourself. The judge ordered that the defendant be removed, and guards escorted Max away. Throughout the ordeal, he kept shouting threats at Greg. Adrian observed silently. His strategy was going perfectly. The prosecution constructed its case methodically, with each piece of evidence strategically positioned for maximum impact. Detective Welch testified regarding the inquiry. When we dug deeper, we discovered a pattern of illicit activities spanning years. The hit and run was only the tip of the iceberg, and the victim, Timothy Bennett, a bank compliance officer, reported suspicious activities involving the defendant's accounts. He was killed before he could submit his report. The defense attempted to raise reasonable doubts, but the evidence was overwhelming. Bank documents, witness statements, security footage, and DNA evidence. Everything pointed to Elena's and Max's culpability. During a break, Lorna informed Adrian of the jury's reactions. They're convinced, and you can see it in their expressions. The prosecution's timetable matches the facts flawlessly, and the offshore accounts have been blocked. The forensic team found everything as anticipated. When this is complete, they will not have a single penny left. The experiment lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution put out years of illicit behavior to construct a strong case. The defense became overwhelmed and resorted to desperate tactics. Elena's counsel attempted to portray her as the victim of Max's manipulation. Max's attorney said she was the mastermind. Their opposing defenses simply helped the prosecution's case. Finally, when both sides had rested, the jury began to deliberate. They returned in less than 4 hours on the charge of first-degree murder. How do you find it? We find Elena Cross guilty. We find defendant Max Ugla guilty. The verdicts proceeded. Guilty on all charges. Money laundering, fraud, conspiracy, and murder each carry maximum sentences that must be served consecutively. Elena wailed as she was dragged away. Adrian, I understand you did this. I know it was you. He watched her leave, his face expressionless. Justice had been delivered, not via violence or criminal means, but through the methodical presentation of facts. Later, in his office, he updated his project file one final time. Phase 3 completed targets were convicted on all counts. Maximum punishment secured. Justice is achieved through legal procedures. Juana entered with champagne to serve justice. She said Adrian raised his glass slightly in response. As the judgments made news around the country, journalist Calvin Hurley provided in-depth coverage to ensure the public understood the full gravity of Elena and Max's crimes. Adrian watched the media reports with a peaceful contentment that settled over him. His vengeance had not necessitated violence or unlawful activity. He had merely revealed the facts, leaving them to be judged by their own deeds. 2 months after the verdicts, Adrian sat in his office, reviewing his team's final reports. The impact of the trial had altered the city's commercial scene, exposing corruption far beyond Elena and Max's personal circle. Gloria put a file on his desk. The last of the accounts has been cleared, all assets have been discontinued, and all properties have been liquidated. They are left with nothing but prison commissary funds. She hesitated, and Greg Galloway is officially under witness protection. However, our sources suggest he is becoming nervous. He keeps gazing over his shoulder. Adrian nodded. Greg's betrayal of Max and Elena had been beneficial, but it was still betrayal. Keep track of him. He'll learn his lesson soon enough. Lana entered with another update. The appeals were refused. All convictions were upheld. They will serve their entire sentences. Their lawyers dismissed them. There is no money left to pay legal fees. She examined Adrian's expression. You are aware that you have won. Completely. Adrian exhaled. It was never about winning, he explained. It was about justice. He strolled over to his desk, where a chessboard rested, the pieces positioned in checkmate. A game he had begun the day of Perry's wedding, and played move by move. Gloria brought up one final point as his idea unfolded. The foundation paperwork was ready. The Cross Foundation helps victims of domestic abuse. The press announcement is set for next week. Adrian nodded. Make sure the initial funding goes to organizations that help people rebuild after betrayal. Not just physically but also emotionally and financially. The irony was obvious. He was using the money recovered from Elena's theft to assist those who had been misled and manipulated. Later that evening, Adrian organized a private dinner for his key team members Lorna, Gloria, Donnie Johns, and Calvin Hurley. They met in a secluded room at the city's most upscale restaurant. Lana lifted her glass to successful collaborations. Adrian added to loyalty. His eyes traveled across each face. These folks have demonstrated their worth and dedication. Unlike Elena and Max, they recognized the importance of trust. Calvin leaned forward. What happens next? After exposing a scandal this large, anything else feels anticlimactic. Adrian said, "We focus. The foundation, new company initiatives, and reinforcing what we already have." Donnie smirked as he watched our backs. Adrian responded, "Let them come," his voice steady and unwavering. "We are ready for them." As dinner progressed, the conversation went to Lorna's future goals, which included expanding her law business to specialize in fraud victims. Gloria had received a promotion to Chief Operating Officer. Donnie is investigating. The firm was booming, with a stronger reputation than ever. Gloria lifted her eyebrow. "You've transformed all of our lives." Adrian shakes his head. "You've earned it. Loyalty merits recognition. Betrayal should have consequences." Later that night, Adrian returned to his office and discovered a letter waiting for him. "What's the return address?" Elena's desperate scribbling filled the pages of the state penitentiary for women. "Please." And accusations mingled together. She begged for assistance, threatened to expose, and begged again. Her comments dripped with desperation, and her mental state was deteriorating. Adrian read one paragraph before feeding the letter into the shredder. Her words meant nothing. Now his phone is busted, and he receives a text from his security team. Greg Galloway saw a little village several states distant, while under witness protection. Adrian responded with one word: proceed. Lessons on treachery had to be thorough. The next morning, Adrian went over the Foundation's first project, a safe housing complex for those rebuilding their lives after betrayal. The irony was not lost on him, and using Elena's seized assets to assist individuals she would have preyed on gave him a special thrill. "The contractors have been vetted," Gloria reported. "Construction begins next month." "Good. Ensure that they grasp our standards. There will be no cutting corners." His new life was taking form. The ache of betrayal had not subsided. It had turned into something helpful, a tool for assisting others and a shield to keep him strong. The office buzzed with bustle. His legitimate firms were growing and entering new markets. Success was the best vengeance, but he never allowed it to make him vulnerable. Sir Gloria interrupted his thoughts. "Detective Welch has come to see you, Bernice." Welch said, her expression serious. "Professional, but respectful." "Mr. Cross, intriguing developments in the case." "Oh, Greg Galloway," she stopped. "He is asking for greater protection. Says he is being observed." Adrian leaned back. "The witness protection program should handle this." Welch nodded and studied his face. "They should. But we both know there's more to this story, right?" Adrian smiled slightly. "Justice comes in many forms, detective." She kept his eyes for a long time. "Remember that the law has boundaries." His smile did not waver. "Of course. I always stay within the law." After she left, he went back to work. The Foundation plans required attention. New business prospects awaited. Life moved forward, but he never forgot the lessons he acquired. Trust, once destroyed, was lost forever. Loyalty, when demonstrated and justified, is rewarded, and betrayal always has consequences. The truth slowly dawned, then all at once. The trial's media coverage triggered further investigations, revealing the full depth of Elena and Max's criminal activities. Calvin Hurley's exhaustive series revealed decades of deception, manipulation, and murder. Calvin told Adrian that the public response has been amazing, and he handed him advance copies of his recent articles. "People can't believe how big their operation is." Adrian perused the pages. Truth has power, especially when revealed at the appropriate time. The stories covered everything, including money laundering, murders, and an elaborate network of deceit. Each discovery prompted fresh investigations, revealing yet more criminals linked to their network. Elena, who was in prison, received the articles with increasing dread. Her lawyer gave each new humiliation. More crimes have been discovered, and the evidence against her is mounting. "They're calling me a black widow," she yelled during a jail visit. Her lawyer groaned, fatigued. "They call you what you are. The evidence speaks for itself." Meanwhile, Adrian had one last assignment. He checked the DNA test findings again. Elena boasts in the recording of manipulating Perry. The time needed to be ideal. He agreed to meet Perry in a quiet cafe. She arrived hesitantly, her wedding band already gone, her marriage just another casualty of her mother's exposure. "Why did you want to see me?" Her tone was harsh but interested. Adrian put a folder on the table. You deserve the truth. All of it. The DNA results contained recordings of Elena's chats, proving how she had systematically poisoned Perry against him. Perry pulled the folder away. I do not want to see this. Yes, you do. His voice was calm and forceful. You've spent years believing lies. It is time to confront reality. Perry's hands shook as she studied the DNA. The results were clear. She was not his biological daughter. The transcripts demonstrated how Elena lied, manipulated, and warped reality, and how she used Perry as a weapon against him. Perry's face turned pale. She muttered, "No, this cannot be." Adrian's voice was icy and uncompromising. Your mother's best skill was manipulation. He met her gaze. She manipulated you, and you let her. I was a child. You are not a child anymore. Adrian's voice was cold. You made your choice. Perry's eyes filled up with tears. What should I do now? That is not my concern. Adrian stood. You choose a side. You can now live with the consequences. He left her there, grieving over the truth she had refused to accept for so long. It was brutal, but necessary. Actions had repercussions, and mindless adherence to evil earned no rewards. Adrian returned to his office and received another update from his security staff. Greg Galloway's witness protection was not providing the security he had hoped for. Strange occurrences continued happening. Nothing illegal, nothing traceable, but enough to show Greg the cost of disloyalty. He's paranoid, Gloria said. He rarely sleeps and jumps at shadows. Good, Adrian responded. Let him live with his terror. It is more effective than any physical punishment. The last parts were falling into place. The truth regarding Elena and Max's crimes was widely known. Their empire was devastated. Their reputations were damaged. Their freedom had been taken away. And everyone who had helped them was now facing their own repercussions. Adrian scheduled a final visit to the prison, where Elena and Max were being detained. They were escorted to separate interview rooms under strong security. He went to Max first. The once charismatic businessman had degraded behind bars, his costly clothes replaced by jail denim, and his confidence broken. Come to gloat? Max asked coldly. But no. Adrian's voice sounded even. I came to make sure you understood why you were here. Because you set us up. Because you were crooks who believed you were untouchable. I am simply exposing the truth. Max rushed forward, but his shackles stopped him. You wrecked everything. Adrian's expression remained frigid. No. You ruined everything. I merely made certain you faced the consequences. Elena's interview room came next. She tried to grin when he entered, but it slipped due to his face. Adrian, please, she continued. We could still work. He cut her off. Still pretend you did not steal from me. Still pretend you didn't murder an innocent man. Still pretend you did not poison my kid against me. She said, our daughter, not yours. His voice was icy. Isn't that just one more lie exposed? Elena's facade cracked. You did it. All of it. You devastated us. Adrian's gaze never wavered. No, Elena, you have wrecked yourselves. I simply ensured that everyone saw you for who you truly are. He stood there, looking down at her. Enjoy being in prison. You will have decades to think about your options. As he started to go, she yelled out, I once loved you. He did not turn back. No, he said simply. You enjoy what I can offer you. There is a distinction. Outside the prison, Adrian felt no triumph or delight. Just a peaceful sense of justice served. The truth had been revealed. Consequences are provided. Lessons were taught back at his office. Lorna and Gloria were awaiting the final reports. Gloria read Greg Galloway's most recent communication and handed him a transcript, but he is pleading for more protection. He claims he is being followed. Adrian read the report. His look is unreadable. The witness protection program has its limits, he said coldly. Some betrayals cannot be defended against me. I paused, and Perry inquired cautiously. Adrian's response remained firm. She knows the truth now. All of it. Her decision is hers. He spoke without regret. She decided to believe Elena's falsehoods. Now she can live with her decision. Another update from his security team regarding his phone bust. Greg was under surveillance. The man was disintegrating, and his paranoia grew by the day. He'd soon realize that no protective software could keep him from facing the repercussions of his actions. Gloria reported that the Foundation's first shelter will open next week, which has shifted the subject. Press coverage has been confirmed, and your speech is ready for review. Adrian nodded, a sense of contentment washing over him. The money Elena and Max took would now be used to help others rebuild their lives following betrayal. It was fitting. It was justice. In his own office, he opened his project file one final time. Finally, total justice is accomplished through legal means, with all targets suffering the consequences of their acts. Betrayals are uncovered and punished. The truth was revealed to all parties. The project ended satisfactorily. He closed the file and opened his safe, finding the original phone, which contained Elena's texts from the beginning. Those texts, which had previously served as proof of a single betrayal, were now simply one component of a much bigger pattern of deception. Sir Gloria entered his office with a final update. Calvin's most recent article has just gone live. It is all out there now. They did everything and wounded everyone. The public is aware of the full story. Adrian allowed himself a slight smile. His vengeance had not necessitated violence or unlawful activity. He merely revealed the truth and let their own actions condemn them. Justice is served cold and complete. As darkness fell on the city, the office lights dimmed. In different prison cells, Elena and Max faced their first night, knowing Adrian had planned their collapse. Greg Galloway jumped at shadows in his witness protection quarters, knowing that no program could keep him safe indefinitely, while Perry faced her own terrible truths about devotion and treachery somewhere in the city. Adrian stood at his window, observing the city lights. He had changed, hardened by betrayal but strong by justice. He wouldn't be susceptible again. Trust, once destroyed, was lost forever. Loyalty, when demonstrated and deserved, results in treachery. Betrayal always had consequences. For years, people would tell stories about how a man turned treachery into justice, and how truth became the ultimate weapon. However, Adrian Cross saw it as the entire price of treachery. Adrian Cross stood at the podium of the Cross Foundation's 10th annual gala, 10 years later, his dominating presence unchanged. Despite the decade that had gone, the charity had grown beyond anyone's dreams, assisting countless in rebuilding their lives following betrayal. 10 years ago, he addressed the audience. "We promised to turn grief into purpose. Today, we have helped over 10,000 people in the audience restore their lives and dignity." Lana Moyer and Gloria McDowell sat at the primary table. Both have achieved new heights in their careers. Lorna now led the city's most prestigious law practice, which specializes in white-collar crimes. Gloria was the CEO of Cross Enterprises, where she oversaw an empire based on ethics and justice. After his speech, Adrian joined them at the table. Gloria stated that the new shelter will open next month, scanning her tablet, which includes 23 locations across the country and a legal help program. Adrian inquired, "Expanding to 15 states?" Lorna responded, "We've helped over 3,000 victims recover stolen assets." The foundation was their most apparent triumph this year, but it was far from the only one. Cross businesses had tripled in size, gaining a reputation for ethical business practices and establishing the norm for corporate governance. Detective Welch called Gloria and casually remarked that she was retiring next month. "I was wondering whether you would attend her farewell supper." Adrian nodded. Bernice Welch had become an unlikely ally over time. She had never directly acknowledged his part in exposing Elena and Max's crimes, but they had grown to appreciate each other. "Is there any word from our old friends?" Adrian inquired, but he already knew the answer. Elena's latest appeal was dismissed. Lorna stated that she is still under high security following her escape attempt 3 years ago. "And Max?" She paused, scanning her notes, still in solitary. The cartel's second assault on his life was approaching. And Greg Gloria's smile was chilly, still running. "He has changed names 4 times in the last decade, and never stays in one spot. For more than 6 months, paranoia has engulfed him." The lecture had been thorough. Greg Galloway survived, but in perpetual fear. No witness protection program could protect him from the consequences of his betrayal. Every few months, something would occur. Nothing unlawful, nothing traceable, but enough to make him realize that his actions had consequences. Calvin Hurley approached their table, recorder in hand. The journalist has a successful career researching corporate crimes. Following his coverage of the Cross case, Mr. Cross approached Keir to remark on the 10-year anniversary of the case that altered everything. Adrian simply remarked, "Justice does not expire. Consequences do not exist." After the gala, Adrian returned to his office. The chessboard was still on his desk. He'd played numerous games after that first one, but never against anyone else. The game was always played against oneself, as a test of strategy and forethought. His phone rang with a message from one of his sources at the women's prison. Elena had attempted to transmit another letter. It would never reach him, as it had done for the previous decade. She had aged poorly in prison. Her attractiveness diminished, and her manipulating talents were blunted by seclusion. Even the other convicts avoided her, knowing what she had done. Desperate, she spent her days attempting to reach the outside world, but all of her bridges had been burned. Max. It performed considerably worse. The cartel's vengeance had been partially effective. He had survived their efforts but lived in perpetual fear. Sir Gloria entered, carrying a familiar file, and solitary imprisonment was his only defense, which may not be adequate forever. The quarterly Perry report. Adrian examined it dispassionately. Perry attempted to reconstruct her life after discovering the truth about her parentage and her mother's manipulations. She'd relocated across the nation, changed her identity, and started again. But the shadow of her decisions followed her. Gloria, who continues to visit a therapist twice a week, acknowledged that she has written multiple letters requesting a meeting and filed them alongside the others. Some betrayals could not be undone. Perry had made her decision years before, choosing Elena's lies over the truth. Now she had to deal with the consequences. Donnie Johns's investigation firm has grown into a countrywide operation, with his reputation built on exposing the Cross case. He continued to handle delicate tasks for Adrian as needed, and their profitable cooperation was stronger than ever. Gloria reported that new security protocols are in place. Donnie and his staff personally vetted everyone. Adrian had learned his lesson well. Trust was earned through years of commitment, and verification never ended. His dominion was founded on expertise and a terrifying reputation, but it was sustained by unwavering vigilance. Later that evening, Adrian went to one of the Foundation shelters. The residents had no idea who he was. He preferred to observe discreetly, seeing directly how his resources were helping others rebuild. In a quiet area, a woman spoke to a support group, sharing her tale. "I thought I'd never recover," the woman continued, her voice firm but full of passion. "He grabbed everything, including my money, confidence, and trust. But here, I regained strength." Adrian listened from the doorway. These stories were about betrayal, manipulation, and thievery. However, unlike his own, these had happier endings. The Foundation provides legal advice, financial assistance, and professional training, empowering victims to rebuild and protect themselves. Back in his penthouse office, Adrian studied the Foundation's latest expansion plans, which included building global branches and pushing its goal beyond boundaries. Each institution would be named after the cross, as a reminder that betrayal can lead to retribution. Lana came to a late meeting. "The new legal team is ready," she stated. All were thoroughly vetted and devoted to the objective. The backgrounds are clean. Donnie's squad dated back 3 generations. There are no links to any of our previous friends. They'd learned to be thorough. Success breeds enemies, and the Cross Empire had plenty. However, Adrian's reputation for dealing with betrayal deterred the majority of threats. Those who ignored the warnings received painful lessons. "There's something extra." Someone added it. "Remember Tim Bennett's family? The hit-and-run victim?" Adrian nodded. How could he forget that Bennett's murder had been the key to uncovering everything? His daughter recently graduated from law school at the top of her class. She is applying for our legal assistance program. Adrian made an immediate decision to hire her. Allow her to help others receive justice. It was fitting that the tragedy that exposed Elena's and Max's crimes would now be used to help future victims. Justice had a way of bringing things full circle. Years of seeing Elena and Max's demise taught them vital lessons. Their empire, founded on betrayal and murder, had shattered. However, Adrian's foundation is based on reality, and consequences grow stronger with each passing year. The Foundation's success really pleased him. Using the stolen funds recovered from Elena's theft to assist other victims was ideal justice. Each person who assisted was another triumph, demonstrating the consequences of treason. Gloria arrived with the night's last reports. "Greg is on the move again," she said. After being startled in Seattle and moving east, Adrian allowed himself a little smile after a decade of running away and jumping at shadows. Greg's punishment was psychological, but it was just as effective. Adrian said, "Let him run. Fear is a more effective teacher than suffering." The city lights spread below his office, reshaping the scene that he had helped create. The cross symbol now represented justice and consequences, a warning to anyone who would breach confidence, and a lighthouse for those attempting to rebuild his phone bust. Detective Welch provided a final case update before retiring. Another fraud exposed another criminal operation. Their partnership was dismantled, despite the fact that it was never officially acknowledged. Sir Gloria's voice contained a hint of humor. Elena's latest prison interview request was denied. She claims she has crucial information to share. Even after 10 years, she had not learned, and she continued to manipulate and believe she could negotiate. However, her bargaining strength was long gone. The truth had taken away her weapons, leaving her with nothing but regret and time to consider her options. The next morning, Max received news. Another inmate attempted to contact him in solitary. Somebody with cartel links. The attempt failed, but Max's terror increased. He'd spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, just like Greg did. Adrian switched his attention to the morning's Foundation reports. which featured 3 new success stories: a lady who rebuilt her firm after a partner's treachery, a man who recovered from financial fraud, and a family who survived domestic abuse. Each one stood for justice, saving lives, rebuilding communities, and claiming second chances. Gloria announced that the 10-year impact report was ready. The figures are stunning, but they represent more than simply numbers. These were victories. Each person who helped dealt another blow against betrayal, demonstrating the strength of justice. The Cross Empire demonstrated the unavoidable repercussions of treason. Adrian had turned his personal pain into a force for justice. His revenge had served as both a warning and a motivator. He opened his project file one last time, making a final entry: 10 years of justice served, lessons learned. Legacy established the truth. It reverberates across time, and its repercussions endure. He then closed the file. Turning to look out the window, he saw the city transformed by his influence, but not by his tactics. He had accomplished everything through legal means, using the truth as his weapon and justice as his justification. At his desk, the chessboard awaited a new game in progress, but the previous game, which began during Perry's wedding, had ended in perfect checkmate. His opponents had never seen it coming, never realized until it was too late that their own acts would be their undoing. Adrian Cross had transformed treachery into an empire of justice, and personal suffering into public benefit. His name now represented repercussions. Quick, legal, and inevitable. The lesson was clear: once broken, trust was lost forever. Loyalty, when proven, is earned. Betrayal yields a reward. Betrayal has always had consequences. Some say time heals all wounds. But Adrian knew better. Time did not heal, it educated, and he had made certain that those teachings would never be forgotten.